Okay, so one more thing we'll do quickly before I give you some instructions. Let's introduce ourselves, know each other. I know some of you already know each other, came from the same AP1 class. So, but it would be nice to know the new students, new faces, and let them know about you. So, two things. One, you'll tell your name loud, clear, and why you are here. Okay? That's your future plan. So, let's start here, Sarah.
Sarah Drayton, and I'm CEO in
Marcia Casey, and I'm an occupational therapy program.
Sarita Hassan, I'm occupational therapy. Pamela Wheeler, nursing.
Maureen Guardian, nursing.
Erin Murray, nursing.
Mark Beavish, nursing.
Trisha Miller, nursing. Jen Ewing, ultrasound. Kristen Edlin for nursing. Rajan Hirsch, nursing.
Kyle Schneider, from firefighter EMT, and municipal ISU.
Good. Okay, so most of you for nursing, and but all of you for the allied health or health-related profession. So it is very important for you to understand the human body, right? And how the human body is structured, how the human body works, different systems of our body work. Very important to know the human body for your future plan or profession. But one thing is, I always tell the students that human body is the most complicated thing. Understanding the human body is even more complicated than the rocket science. Although we say to tell something very difficult or hard, we say rocket science. But human brain, creates all those sciences. So human body is the most complicated thing, and you are here to understand the most complicated thing. So you know what we have to do to understand the most complicated thing. We have to be very serious, right? Have to be serious, spend a lot of time, and must be attentive and focused, organized. So all those things are very important for you to be successful in anatomy and physiology. And anatomy and physiology part one was mostly memorization of different muscles, bones, parts of the bones, right? All those things and structures of the body. Anatomy and physiology 2 is a little bit different than anatomy and physiology 1. Why? In NP2, you mostly focus on the systems of the body, how they work. So more understanding using logics, okay, to understand the things, then memorization. So that's the main difference between NP1 and 2. In NP2, we'll go over many systems in our body and mostly how they work to perform their functions. Of course, when you learn each system, you learn the structure of that system, parts of those systems, right? So the structures are very much related to the functions. So remember that. First thing what you need to know is how to find the materials I have posted already on Blackboard. So when you will open the college website, you will click here and see the Blackboard button here. You'll click on that and then you will log in the Blackboard. To log in, you will need your ID and password. I hope all of you have already logged in Blackboard to see the materials I have posted, because I emailed to you too, right? That you go and find those materials I have posted already. So I hope you have tried that, but if you haven't, just make sure today you do that. You will type your ID and then the password. That will take you to a page or window where you will see the listing of the classes you are enrolled in this semester. So here are, this is from my side, so I see the classes I am teaching in this semester. So you will see the classes you are taking in this semester, and your section is Bio 208 302. This is your section. So you will click on your section there, and that will take you here. Two things are important here. One is the announcements. You see on the left panel there are some buttons here and announcements on the top, and if you click there, it will show you if I make any important announcements. So that is one thing. And then another important component here is course content. That is the most important thing. If you click the course content, it will show you the materials I have posted. Okay. And most of the materials will be found under the course content, so make sure you check that regularly. I have already posted few things here: syllabus, lecture schedule, lab schedule, and today's lecture slides, PowerPoint slides for today's lecture, right? So you will see those things under course content. And one thing I would recommend is making a folder. Please make a folder. Of course, it's up to you. That's my recommendation, not mandatory. Make a folder for AP2 and print out this information: syllabus, your lecture schedule, your lab schedule. And also, it is very helpful if you print out the lecture slides I post. And not necessarily you have to print each slide in each page. It will take a lot of ink and pages, right? Better if you do like this: 6 slides you can, print in one page. That will save your paper as well as ink, okay? And money. So. But if you want to do like that, that's fine. It's okay. But doing that would really help you if you make a folder, a binder that you can carry anywhere, right? And before the exam, or whenever you get a chance, you can just go over those slides. Okay? That would be really helpful. And if you have your folder with you, you won't need to come to me to ask when our next test is, when, what time. Those things are already there, right? I don't mind if you come to me, but if I see that you are not carrying yourself, that it's kind of not good to see that those materials are already there. Okay, so that is one very important thing. So lecture schedule will tell you which systems will go over and how many exams are in lecture part of this class. So here is the lecture schedule, and 5 lecture exams you have to take, 5 lecture exams. Each exam has 100 points. So total how many exams? 5, right? So you have 500 points in lecture exam. And there are 3 lab exams. Each lab exam has 100 points. So total for the lab part, you have 300 points, and for the lecture part, 500 points. Okay? So when you will finish all those exams, then I'll do the average of your score. And out of 100, if you get 90 or more, then your letter grade will be A. If you get 80 to 89, your grade will be B. If you get 70 to 79, your grade will be C, right? And below that, D and F. I don't want to mention that because I don't want to see that you have received D or F. Okay? I want to see you very successful. That is the main purpose for you to be here. You are here to be successful. Okay, so that is very important that you get A or B, or at least C, not below that. Very important. But also, not only getting the good grade is important. Another very important thing is how much you have learned. You are here to learn too, right? So that is also very important. And so how you will learn a lot and be successful. Few suggestions. Number 1, don't miss any class. Okay? It's very important. Eventually you will discover, you will find that attending in the lectures and labs are really important, because if you miss any lecture, you will miss some important information, and when you take the exam, you will not be able to answer. Okay? It is very important that you should be present in all lectures and labs, unless something very, really urgent or serious happens, then of course understand it. Right? But I don't force anybody to come to the lecture, but you will realize that if you miss the lecture, from that you will lose it. Okay, so you have paid your money to learn the things and be successful, so it is your responsibility. Okay? So keep that in mind. So don't miss the class, number 1. Number 2, how to study. You know that I will post the lecture materials before the class. So before the lecture, you will find the PowerPoint slides. Here you see today's lecture slides are already there. So first priority would be go over those slides. Okay? You will go over those slides and make sure that you understand the materials already in the slides. And then number 2, class notes. During my lecture, you will take notes, right? And those notes are also very important. Some important things you may not find in the slides, but I will mention in my lecture or write on the board, so make sure you take those notes. And so go over the class notes. And when you feel comfortable that yes, I know almost everything on the slides and I took good notes during the lecture, I have good notes, and then after those 2 things, you will go and read the chapter in your textbook. So that is my recommendation, okay? Because most of the questions in your exam will be from the slides. Because I have made those slides by taking the important, extracting the important information from the books. That's my job, right? To find the important information and deliver it to you. So I have made those slides. Those I thought that those information is important for you. So go over the slides and then go over the class notes, and then last is go over just read the chapter. Okay, just read the chapter. But most of the questions again will be from the slides and the lecture notes. Almost all of the questions in your exam will be from the slides and my lecture. There could be few questions from other sources. So if you feel confident that yes, I know the materials on the slides, I attended in all lectures and I understood the things, so you shouldn't have any problem. You should easily get an A, or at least. Okay. So that's my recommendation how to study. Now, if you see the syllabus that I have posted, you need to know a few important things here. Contact information, how to contact me. My office is in the second floor of this building. We have only one building, so it's very easy to find everybody. So second floor, room number 228, and feel free to come to my office at any time, okay? And if you have any concern, need any help, just please feel free, don't hesitate, okay? Come to my office and talk to me. Or call me or email me. Email is very good way to communicate, so email me. And your textbook is Human Anatomy and Physiology by Marieb, the same textbook that you have used in your AP1 in this campus. But other campuses, they use different books, so it might not be the same. So Marieb's Human Anatomy and Physiology is the textbook. I don't force the students to bring the textbook in the classroom. It's up to you. If you want to carry it, bring it. If you don't, not necessarily. But you must bring your lab manual. Okay? I would like to see your lab manuals every time, every lab. So don't forget to bring your lab manual. Okay? Don't forget to bring the lab manual. You have to go over the reviews and other things in your lab manual. If you don't have money right now to buy both, first priority is the lab manual. Okay? To buy the lab manual first. And same lab manual again that you have used here. If you took your AP1 in this campus, it is the same lab manual. So you don't, in that case, you don't have to buy. Okay? And lab manual, our lab manual is a customized version, specially ordered lab manual. So you will only find in our bookstore here. Okay? And because we have ordered that and asked them to put only the information, the chapters we want. Okay? So that's the lab manual you need. And after you finish your class successfully, you will get 4 credit hours. And here the course objective, please read it whenever you get a chance. The materials will be covered in this course. And then the points, distribution of points, I have already mentioned. 3 lab exams, 300 points, 5 lecture exams, 500 points. And remember that your exams are not cumulative. That means once you finish one exam and the materials are covered for that exam, will not be repeated, will not be repeated in next exam. That part is done. So even final exam is not cumulative. All exams carry equal weight. Okay? Okay. attendance, very important. As I mentioned, that if you miss the class, you will suffer. And if due to any real, emergency, you miss or you think that you won't be able to take the lecture exam, call me before the exam. Okay? Call me and let me know that something emergency, something very urgent that I won't be able to make it. But you have to convince me by showing the evidence that why if you are sick, you are hospitalized, you have to show me the paper to convince me. Okay? And I usually can't give to take a makeup test or more than one exam. If you miss one, in that case, okay, you will be given a chance to take that. But two or more is not good. In that case, we have to go. We have to talk and see. That's usually one is acceptable, but not more than that. Okay. Lab exams, very important. You know how the lab exams are arranged, right? You have seen that the structures are, made out from the room and you move from one station to another, and you understand how difficult to prepare those exams, right? Put all the numbers and stickers on the models and take them out is also. So don't miss any lab exam. We have 3 lab exams and make sure that you take those lab exams on time. But again, if it is really, emergency and situation is like that, you can take the exam. In that case, probably I will let you take the exam, but the grading will be out of 80. So you will automatically lose some point. Your grading will be done out of 80 instead of out of 100. The reason is, in that case, I won't probably give the exactly same exam. It may be differently. Okay, so make sure that you know the schedule for lab exams and take the lab exams on time. The lecture schedule that you got is a tentative lecture schedule. That means some, in some lectures we cover more materials, but if we get engaged in discussion, then we'll lose some time, right? In that case, we'll start from the next class where we stop. So nothing written on the stones. It's not, strictly followed. We'll go in our own pace. But lab schedule, it is fixed. Okay, that means the labs are listed there. Will be done exactly on those days. So we won't change the schedule for the lab. So you already know the dates for lab exams. So make sure you don't get busy with something else. Okay. Inside the classroom, always feel that everybody is equal. So feel free to ask any question during my lecture. Okay, if you don't understand anything, stop me, interrupt me, and ask questions. I always love that students get engaged or get involved in discussion and ask questions, come forward and show their interest in something. Okay, it is very important. And it is very important if you ask me something, I am not necessarily I know everything. I'll try to answer. If I can't, then I'll try to find the answer and tell you in the next lecture day. Or someone else may answer your question. Or at least we can get involved in discussion, and that is very important. Free a chance of information is very important for learning. Okay, so feel free, don't feel shy, don't hesitate to stop me and interrupt me or ask me questions. Probably you have realized by now that my accent is not exactly like yours. Okay? So I'm not a native English speaker, so if you don't understand anything, feel free to ask me again. I know how to answer different ways, so I'm trying to answer. I'm trying to make it understandable to you, but don't feel shy. Don't hesitate. Feel free to ask questions. Okay. Okay. So those are the things I wanted to share with you. Do you have any question?
Yes,
Yes.
I do. Doc, I think that there's, is there a little mistake there? Lecture is at 10 and lab is time?
Time here.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Yes. Yes. We'll do same way we did in.
Is this the lab or is this the lecture right now?
Okay. So yeah, good question.
Okay.
So actually, the lab and lecture are actually together, right? One after another. And in for your section, what I will do, I'll first give the lecture. Okay. And that way, would be better if sometime if we finish the lab part a little bit earlier, then you can go. Otherwise, you have to wait until the lecture comes. So and also it's better when you just get in first listen and people concentrate more in the lecture. Okay. So we'll first do the lecture, and then after the lecture we'll get a short break, then we'll do the lab. Okay.
So what time does lecture get over?
1 hour 15 minutes. Okay. So
Okay.
we'll start the lecture at 10 o'clock and stop at around 11:15. But remember one thing, that since after the lecture you have the lab, right? So I can go 5 minutes more or less. It won't harm. Got it?
I understand. Yes, but it's still misprint.
Okay. So what do you want? The lab first and then lecture? Or
No,
it doesn't matter?
No. What you have there, it's saying different, is what I'm saying.
Same day, but he's changed it.
Okay, I understand.
Understood?
Yeah,
Okay.
I understand.
So first we'll do the lecture, then we'll do the lab. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you mind to be recorded or no?
Okay. So you can record, but you need to make sure that you are not sharing that to anybody else. Okay? It is strictly prohibited. You can only use it for your purpose. Okay? So don't give it to anybody else.
I know you teach another section
Yes.
of this class. If an emergency happens, do you follow the same schedule? Can you attend the other section?
Try to follow the same, but not necessarily. Like in your class, if we get, engaged in discussion, so we may not exactly get it at the same, on the same slide. So, but most part will be overlap.
Okay.
Most part will be overlap. So in that case, yes, talk to me, and I would let you come and listen. You can come and listen. No problem. Okay. If something urgent or emergency. Okay. Okay. Any more questions? No. Okay. So we can start today's lecture. Okay, so today we'll start the blood. Blood is a part of our cardiovascular system. You know that blood circulates inside the blood vessels. And blood is located inside the heart and the blood vessels, right? So blood is a part of our cardiovascular system that circulates inside the cardiovascular system. And in today's lecture, first we'll see how to define the blood. What's the definition of blood? If someone asks you, what is the blood? How you will define it? Then we'll talk about some important properties of blood, some general information on blood. Then we'll talk about important functions of the blood. What are the important functions performed by the blood? Then we'll talk about the components of blood. What are the components of blood? That's the composition of the blood. Then we'll talk about the separation of those components of the blood. How we can separate different components of blood. Then if you see the components of blood, blood consists of two components. One is the plasma. Plasma is the liquid or fluid part of the blood. Okay? And another component is called the formed elements. And formed elements are the blood cells, different types of cells present in the blood. So those are the two main components or major components of blood. Plasma is the liquid or fluid part, and formed elements are the blood cells. Okay? Now, the formed elements or blood cells are red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. So we'll talk about all those three types of blood cells. And plasma is the liquid or fluid part of the blood, and we'll also talk about the plasma. We'll talk about the origin of plasma, from where the plasma comes, the plasma part of the blood comes, and we'll also talk about plasma proteins. What are the plasma proteins? Plasma proteins are the proteins present in the plasma part of the blood. Very simple, right? Plasma proteins are the proteins in the plasma. What are the plasma proteins? There are a number of plasma proteins in the plasma, but three plasma proteins are very important. One is called the albumin, another is called the globulins, and number three, fibrinogens. So albumins, globulins, and fibrinogens, those are the important plasma proteins. There are few other plasma proteins too, but we won't talk about those less important plasma proteins. We talk about the major plasma proteins in the plasma. Okay. So when we talk about the formed elements, first we'll talk about the red blood cells, or RBC. Red blood cells. The morphology of red blood cells. What is that? Morphology indicates the shape or size, external features of something is the morphology. If you see it from outside, how that is structured looks like, that is the morphology. So if you see the red blood cell from outside, how the red blood cell looks like, that's the morphology of red blood cell, we'll see that. Then we'll talk about the formation and maturation of red blood cells. Where the red blood cells come from and how the red blood cells get matured. We'll talk about those. And then we'll talk about the destruction of red blood cells. Red blood cells, the lifespan of red blood cell is 90 to 120 days. That means 3 to 4 months only. Very short lifespan, right? And after 90 to 120 days, the red blood cells are destroyed. And what happens? How the red blood cells are destroyed? and what happens after the destruction of red blood cells. We'll talk about that, okay? And then we'll talk about the hemoglobin, the red colored pigments inside the red blood cells. If you see inside the red blood cells, you will find the hemoglobin. Red blood cells contain hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is the red pigments. Hemoglobin is nothing but pigments, red colored pigments in the red blood cell. And due to the presence of hemoglobin in the red blood cells, the color of the red blood cells is red, because hemoglobin is a red pigment and the color of red blood cells is red. And because of the presence of red blood cells in the blood, the color of the blood is what? Red. So hemoglobin is responsible for the color of red blood cell as well as the color of the blood, red color of the blood. Make sense? Okay. So we'll talk about the hemoglobin and the function, structure and function of hemoglobin. First, we'll talk about how to define the blood. Blood is a special type of connective tissue that circulates throughout the body within a closed system. Very nice definition. Special type of connective tissue. And blood circulates throughout the body within a closed system. Why, now the question is, why blood is a connective tissue? Blood is a connective tissue because blood comes from the mesenchymal tissue or mesenchyme. Probably you remember from NP1, I mentioned a number of times that our bones are connective tissue, right? Our cartilages are connective tissue. Our fats or adipose tissue are connective tissue. Also, blood is a connective tissue. They are different from each other, right? Bone is different than the fat. Fat is different than the blood. But why all of those are connective tissue? The reason is all of them come from a single source. What is that single source? Mesenchyme or mesenchymal tissue. So, remember, all connective tissues originate from the mesenchyme or mesenchymal tissue. Since blood also comes from that same source, blood is a connective tissue. Why blood is a special type of connective tissue, you already know. Why blood is different than other connective tissues. Why blood, how blood is different than the bone, cartilages and fats. Blood is in liquid form. Yes. Other connective tissues are in solid form, right? So that's why it is called a special type of connective tissue. Now, blood circulates within a closed system. What is that? Heart and blood vessels. You know, heart has a chamber inside, right? It's a closed chamber, and inside the blood vessels we have the channels. So the blood circulates inside the heart and the blood vessels within that system. Okay, so remember those few important information. Now, cell phone. Okay, so I didn't mention that, the instruction about the use of cell phone. It is very important that you keep your cell phone silent, in silent or mute mode. You can keep it in vibration. So if you really think that you will get an urgent call, go outside, feel free to get but don't bother others. You understand all of you. We are mature, right? We understand that we are not supposed to disrespect others. And I know all of you do that. Okay. Thank you for reminding. Okay. But make sure that your phone is not on. some general information about blood. Blood, the color of blood, arterial blood is bright red because arterial blood has lot of oxygen. Arterial blood is oxygen-rich blood. Venous blood is dark red or bluish color. The reason is the venous blood has less oxygen, more carbon dioxide. So venous blood looks dark red because of carbon dioxide and lack of oxygen. Arterial blood looks bright red because of the presence of oxygen. When oxygen binds with the hemoglobin of red blood cells, the hemoglobin gives bright red color. Okay? So when the hemoglobin binds with oxygen, the color of hemoglobin becomes bright red. That's why arterial blood is bright red. The pH of blood is between 7.35 to 7.45. That means slightly alkaline. 7.0 is neutral, right? The pH 7 is neutral. The pH of water is what? Water is neutral, right? We know that water is neutral, not acidic or not alkaline. So the pH of water is 7. And if the pH goes above 7, it becomes alkaline. If the pH goes below 7, that becomes acidic. Okay? So the pH of blood is slightly above 7, right? That means it is slightly alkaline. Make sense? Okay. Viscosity, just simply know that viscosity indicates the thickness. And the viscosity or thickness of blood is high. Temperature of blood. Blood is slightly warmer than our body temperature. Slightly warmer than the body, and the temperature of blood is 38 degrees Celsius, which is slightly warmer than the body. The volume of blood in liters in adult male, the total volume of blood is 5 to 6 liters, and adult female, the volume of blood is 4 to 5 liters, less than the male blood volume. Why blood volume is more in male? It is very simple, very easy. The answer is the size. Average, not always true. Some girls are bigger than the boys, some boys. But average, the size of surface area or size of the body is bigger in male, so the total volume of blood is more in male. And male body is more muscular, you know that, so more blood vessels are present in the male body. Important functions of the blood. You have a question?
I do have a
Yes.
question. Why is the color of the blood dark red? It's because of less oxygen.
Less oxygen, more carbon dioxide.
More
So
carbon
yes,
dioxide.
carbon dioxide when binds with the hemoglobin, it is called carbaminohemoglobin, which gives less red color. Okay? And when oxygen binds with hemoglobin, oxyhemoglobin is bright red. Okay?
Yes,
Okay. Important functions of blood. Blood provides oxygen and nutrition to the tissue. You know that our tissue consists of cells, and metabolism occurs in the cells, right? Continuously, 24 hours. Metabolism is being taken place in the body, in the cells of our body, and the cells should be given oxygen and nutrients for metabolism. Okay? And who transports and delivers the oxygen and nutrients to the cells or tissues? The blood. Okay? Transportation of materials to and from the cells. different chemicals are transported by the blood. What are the chemicals? Oxygen, carbon dioxide, hormones, antibodies, all those metabolic wastes, harmful chemicals, those are transported by the blood. The regulation of pH. What's the pH of blood? The pH of blood is 7.35 to 7.45. And keeping that pH constant is very important. If the pH, just think that if the pH of blood goes below that range, then your body will become more what? Less pH means acidic?
Acidic.
Acidic, right? So your body will become acidic. Is it good?
No.
Acid will destroy the cells, kill the cells. It will harm your systems. So maintaining that pH is very important, between 7.35 to 7.45. And within the blood, we have buffers. Those are called blood buffers. So buffers, have you heard buffer?
Yes.
If you have chemistry, I think in high school all of you have learned. What's the function of a buffer? It tries to neutralize. Yes, pH fluctuate, maintain the pH constant, right? Buffer tries to keep the pH constant. No, not neutralize, try to keep the pH constant. If it tries to go up, it will bring it down. If it tries to go down, it will bring it up. That's the function of buffer, right?
Okay.
So, in our blood, we have some buffers. And those buffers keep the pH constant. So, what are the important blood buffers? Important blood buffers are ammonia buffers, phosphate buffers, protein buffers. So those buffers are present in our blood and they will keep the pH unchanged or constant. Those are called the blood buffers. Coagulation is the process of formation of clot. When you get a cut, blood, liquid blood is converted to semi-solid jelly-like clot, right? And the formation of clot, the process is the coagulation. And by that process, the blood prevents the loss of blood from the body by formation of clot, right? Blood prevents the loss of body fluid or blood. Defense is another important function of blood. Blood protects the body from invasion of microorganisms. You know that microorganisms, bacteria or viruses, they always try to invade in our body, right? And try to kill the cells of the body, cause harm to our body. And blood can destroy the microorganisms by two ways. One is the white blood cells. Some white blood cells can engulf the microorganisms by phagocytosis. Have you heard phagocytosis? What is that? Cell eating. So, some white blood cells can engulf the microorganisms and destroy them by phagocytosis. Some white blood cells can produce antibodies. Antibodies are protein molecules. And antibodies can also inactivate or kill the microorganisms or destroy the microorganisms. So blood, white blood cells of blood can destroy the microorganisms by two means. One is some white blood cells can engulf, eat the microorganisms, and some white blood cells can produce antibodies, that highly specialized protein molecules that are called antibodies, and they can destroy the microorganisms. Okay? So defense is another important function of the blood, protecting the body from microorganisms. Stabilization of body temperature. Since blood has a lot of water in it, blood has a lot of water, and water has high heat capacity. It can take a lot of heat inside it. Right? We have talked about that if you want. So if in particular part of your body the temperature increases, what will happen? The blood will go to that area, take the water part of blood will take that heat, absorb that heat, and take it away from that part of the body, diffuse it throughout the body. So that is the main way blood will balance the body temperature. Help in excretion of metabolic waste. You know that continuously metabolism is being taken place in our tissues, our cells, right? All living cells have metabolism. And when metabolism occurs, harmful chemicals are produced in the cells. And those harmful chemicals, toxic chemicals, should be taken out from the tissues, right? So the blood takes those harmful chemicals from the tissues and take those chemicals to the kidneys and give the chemicals, harmful chemicals, to the kidneys, and kidneys will produce urine and will throw it out from the body. Make sense? So that is another very important function, that blood will collect the harmful chemicals. Those are the product of metabolism, and they will be taken to the kidneys, delivered to the kidneys, and kidneys will throw them out from the, excrete them out from the body. What are the harmful chemicals? If I ask you, name a couple of harmful chemicals, those are produced in our body, and those are harmful for our body. They can kill our cells, so they should be thrown out from the body, out from the body. Urea, uric acid. Have you heard? Urea, uric acid, ammonia, another very harmful chemical in our body. Creatinine. Have you heard creatine? If you do the kidney test, the kidney function, they will do the creatine level, measure the creatine level in your blood. If kidney cannot excrete, then remove the creatine from the body, the concentration of creatine will be high, right? And that's harmful. So those are harmful chemicals. I'm repeating again. Urea, uric acid, ammonia, creatine. Okay, so those are harmful chemicals are continuously being produced in our body and should be excreted from the body. Okay, so we already know the important functions of the blood. Now we talk about the composition of blood. Important components of the blood. Blood consists of two components. Plasma is the liquid or fluid part, which gives 55% volume of blood. And another component is the formed elements, the blood cells. And formed elements give 45% volume of blood. So 55% volume is given by the plasma, and 45% is given by the formed elements, that means the blood cells. Now, if you take 100 milliliter of blood in a test tube and separate the plasma and formed elements, what should be the volume of plasma? You have taken 100 milliliter, right? And what should be the volume of plasma and what should be the volume of formed elements? 55 milliliter should be the plasma and 45 milliliter should be the formed. Very simple math, not difficult. Okay. So that's okay. Now the plasma is the liquid part or fluid part of the blood, right? And plasma is mainly formed by water. Water is 92% of plasma is water, and 7% of plasma is plasma proteins, and 1% is other solutes in the plasma. So plasma is mostly water, and 7% is plasma proteins. What are the important plasma proteins? There are a number of plasma proteins in the plasma, but just remember the important ones. Important plasma proteins are albumin, globules, and fibrinogens. Okay, so those are the important plasma proteins. Okay, now the formed elements are the blood cells, and blood cells are red blood cells. 3 types of blood cells are present in the blood: red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. And now, if you see this picture, they have shown different components of blood. So here is the blood in the test tube, and blood consists of plasma and formed elements. Plasma is 55%. Here they have given the range. You don't need to remember, just remember 55% is plasma and 45% is the formed elements. Now plasma consists of plasma proteins, water is 92%, 7% plasma proteins, and 1% other solids, right? Now, there are different types of plasma proteins, but 3 of them are very important. What are those 3 plasma proteins? Albumin, globules, and fibrinogens, okay? Now, I'll just mention one important function of each, and you have to remember that. It is very important for your test, and don't forget. So, albumins are responsible for colloid osmotic pressure, maintaining the osmotic pressure, that is called colloid osmotic pressure. Okay, that's the main function of albumins, maintaining the colloid osmotic pressure. I will tell what is that. Globules are responsible for defense, and globules are nothing but antibodies. So globules are antibodies, and you know the function of antibodies. We have talked about that. Antibodies can neutralize, inactivate, or kill the microorganisms. So globules are mainly responsible for defensive function of the body. And fibrinogens are responsible for the formation of clot formation. And we know that by forming the clot, the blood prevents the loss of blood, right? So those are the important functions of the plasma proteins. Albumins have another important function, that is transportation. Albumins transport some chemicals, so transportation is another important function. You remember those functions. If I ask you in the test that colloid osmotic pressure is maintained by which type of plasma proteins, albumins, globulins, or fibrinogen, that's the albumin, right? Antibodies 5 we know that. And what is colloid osmotic pressure? This is the pressure in the blood that keeps the blood in the center of the blood vessel. So if this is the blood vessel, we know that blood runs through the blood vessels, right? And the colloid osmotic pressure always tries to keep the blood in the center of the blood vessel and prevent the sideways movement of the blood. That means prevents the blood to move towards the wall of the blood vessels. Make sense? Is it clear? So tries to keep the blood in the center part of the blood vessel, and that will help in better flow of the blood inside the blood vessels. Make sense? So if the blood tries to go sideways towards the wall, then the flow will be slower or faster. If the blood molecules tries to go towards the wall, then the flow will be slower, right? So colloid osmotic pressure prevents that outwards flow of the blood molecules, okay? And tries to keep everything together, and the flow of the blood will be faster. So that's the colloid osmotic pressure. Okay, now the formed elements are the blood cells, and we know that there are 3 types of blood cells. Red blood cells look red, white blood cells look white, and there are 5 different types of white blood cells. Only 1 type of red blood cells we have, but how many different types of white blood cells we have? 5 different types of white blood cells. Neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, lymphocytes, and monocytes. So those are 5 different types of white blood cells, and we will repeat the white blood cells in next class when we talk about individual white blood cells. Okay, so just know that there are 5 different types of white blood cells. And platelets are another type of white blood cells. So those are the formed elements or blood cells. Okay. The term fractionations. Fractionations is the process of separating different components of blood. We know that blood has different components, plasma and formed elements, right? And there are different types of plasma proteins in the plasma. How you separate them? How you can separate plasma and formed elements? The process by which you separate those components of blood, it is called the fractionation. And the most common method we use to separate the components of blood is called centrifugation. You put the blood in a test tube and centrifuge. Okay? And when you will do the centrifugation, what will happen? The formed elements, the blood cells, will go to the bottom, and plasma will go to the top. So we will separate the cells from the plasma by centrifugation. And that process of separating is called fractionation. So now, if you take blood in a test tube and blood here and do centrifugation, what will happen? The formed elements will go to the bottom part, will settle in the bottom, and the plasma will go to the top part, right? And if you take 100 milliliter of blood, this volume will be what? 45. And this volume will be 55. Very good. Okay. And this volume is called hematocrit volume or hematocrit value. So hematocrit is nothing but the percent volume of formed elements in the blood. That means in our 100 milliliter of blood, what should be the volume of formed elements? Make sense? Now, if you see here, the definition says that the hematocrit is the volume of percent volume of red blood cells, right? But I have said that it is the volume of what? Formed elements. Actually, they are said. The reason is when you will do the fractionation, you will centrifuge, you will see that this whole part is red because of red blood cells, right? And a very thin layer or coat of white blood cells here. The reason is white blood cells are so less in number compared to red blood cells. The number of white blood cells is extremely less or low. Make sense? So white blood cells will form just a thin line here, and red blood cells will form most part of it. So if you measure this volume and this volume, basically there will be no difference. Maybe only point something. Okay, so that's why they said the volume of red blood cells, but actually it is the volume of blood cells, and they are very close. Okay, and hematocrit value should be 45% in average, and there is a little bit different between male and female. The reason is that the number of red blood cells is more in adult male than adult female. If you take the blood from adult male and count the red blood cells, and take the blood from female and count the red blood cells, who has more red blood cells?
Male.
Male has more red blood cells. And since the red blood cell count is more in male, the hematocrit value should be more in male. Make sense? Because hematocrit value depends on the number of red blood cells. Okay, and that's why you see the difference of hematocrit value in male and female. Just remember that. And you can actually do further fractionations. This part is plasma, right? And now, if you take the plasma part out and put the plasma only in a test tube, here, plasma only in a test tube, and do centrifugation in different rates of different number of speeds, okay, different rates, then what will happen? The plasma has water and different types of plasma proteins, right? What will happen if you do centrifugation in different rates? What will happen? The water part will get separated from the plasma protein part, and then also you can separate 3 different types of plasma proteins by different rates of centrifugation. You can do that, okay? So you can do further fractionations by using different number of speeds in the centrifugation. Origin of plasma proteins. 90% or more plasma protein comes from the liver. So liver is the main source of plasma protein. Liver is the main source of plasma protein, and 90% or more volume of plasma protein will come from the liver. Now, small amount of antibodies. Antibodies are what type of plasma proteins? Globulins, right? Globulins are antibodies. That means small amount of globulins will come from a cell that is called plasma cell. And what is plasma cell? Plasma cell is a a cell that comes from the lymphocytes. And you remember how many different types of white blood cells we have? 5. Very good. Neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, lymphocytes, and monocytes. And just know that there are 5 different types of white blood cells, right? And one type of white blood cell is lymphocytes. This is one type of white blood cells. And some lymphocytes in our blood are converted to another type of cells. Those are called plasma cells. Okay? And the plasma cells will produce the antibodies. Okay? And antibodies are globules. Okay? So a small amount of plasma proteins come from the plasma cells. And what type of plasma proteins? The globules. Those are antibodies. Just know that. Those are the 2 main sources of plasma proteins. Mostly come from the liver and a small amount from the plasma cell. We have talked about 3 important plasma proteins, and I have already mentioned important functions of each of them. Just remember that. Now, we'll talk about the formed elements. Formed elements are the blood cells, and red blood cells are also called erythrocytes. So another name of red blood cells is erythrocytes. And red blood cells have hemoglobin, right? And hemoglobin can bind with oxygen and carbon dioxide. And that's how the hemoglobin helps in the transportation of oxygen and carbon dioxide, because hemoglobin can get attached to the oxygen and carbon dioxide, right? So the main function, if I ask you to tell me the most important function of red blood cells, transportation of gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide. That's the main function, okay? White blood cells are also called leukocytes. Leuko means white and cyte means the mature cells. So white blood cells are also called leukocytes. And if I ask you to tell me the most important function of white blood cells, the most important function is immunity. It protects our body from the microorganisms. And I have already mentioned it, right? That white blood cells by 2 different ways can destroy or inactivate or neutralize the microorganisms. One is some white blood cells can directly engulf the microorganisms by phagocytosis. Some white blood cells can produce the antibodies, okay? And antibodies can destroy the microorganisms. Okay, platelets. Platelets, the main function, the most important function is formation of clot. Helps in the formation of clot, blood clot formation. And now you got 2 important components of blood that help in the formation of clot, right? By now you got 2 important components of blood that help in the formation of clot. One is fibrinogen, plasma protein, and another is the platelet, the blood cell. Those 2 structures, those 2 components of blood, both are very important in the formation of clot. Okay, so let's stop here. Today's lecture start, because we have talked about other things, and we will start from the red blood cells in next class. Okay.